The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams, and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine, and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas! Hello, Thomas! Hello, everyone! Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Summertime is always beautiful on the island of Sodor. The water sparkles in the sun, and the beautiful flowers blossom everywhere. It is the busiest time of year for the Topham Hatt's engines. They collect lots of vacationers from the docks and show them all the splendid sights. Like the seaside, the windmill, and the Sodor suspension bridge. The bridge is one of the vacationers' favorite sights. And each night when the work is done, Gordon, Henry, James, Edward, Percy, and Thomas go back to the home at Tidmouth Sheds, where they can rest their wheels, cool their boilers, and talk about the day's events. The sheds are the engine's home. They're warm and snug, and most of all, they are a cozy place to sleep. One morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to Tidmouth Sheds. He had a very important announcement to make. A new airport is to be built on Sodor. It will bring more vacationers to the island than ever before, he told the engines proudly. The engines were very excited. We'll get to see airplanes, peeped Percy, and show even more visitors the sights, chuffed Thomas. Thomas and Percy arrived at the airport building site with bricks and timber. Think of all the vacationers, chuffed Thomas. And of all the airplanes, peeped Percy. But then, Ari and Bert arrived. Steaming scrap iron in the way again, growled Ari. Why do we have to work near them? Grumbled Bert. This made Thomas and Percy cross. They didn't want to work near the diesels either. They were oily and rude, and loved to talk about scrapping steam engines. Thomas, Percy, Ari, and Bert worked at the airport all morning. I don't like those diesels, moaned Percy. Why are they so rude? The diesels bumped Thomas and biffed Percy. Get in our way again and it's the cutter's torch for both of you, they threatened. Thomas and Percy thought they would like working at the airport, but Ari and Bert stopped them having fun. I wish we could teach those diesels to behave themselves, puffed Thomas. That afternoon, Thomas had to collect some timber from the yard. But when Thomas arrived, Ari and Bert were already there. Their trucks were being loaded with planks of wood ready to take to the building site. We've got an important job to do, growled Bert. More important than any old steamer's job, added Ari. Thomas was cross. But then, he had a very naughty idea. Thomas rolled quietly up behind Bert's trucks and just as the crane dropped the timber, he gave them an extra big shunt. Ha ha ha! Laughed Thomas. Now you'll be late for your important job. And he puffed away. Later, Thomas and Percy were shunting trucks in the yard. They were having a wonderful time. They were bumping trucks and blowing their whistles. Then, Diesel rolled into the yard. I hear you've been making trouble for Ari and Bert, oiled Diesel. But you won't make trouble for me. I've got an important job to do. Thomas had another naughty idea. There were 2 trains ready in front of Thomas. One was full of bricks and timber, the other was full of fruits and vegetables. Diesel was to take the bricks and timber to the building site, but Thomas shunted the fruits and vegetables instead. This will teach those diesels to behave themselves, Thomas snickered. Thomas and Percy were having great fun. Next, Thomas and Percy had to go to the smelter's yard to collect some steel girders. But when they puffed into the yard, they saw something that was very, very frightening. It was Diesel 10. Diesel 10 was big and strong, and he had a big, jagged, mechanical claw. Thomas and Percy watched as the giant claw crushed the iron and steel. Thomas and Percy shivered. Diesel 10 was the biggest and baddest diesel of them all. Let's come back when Diesel 10's not here, Thomas puffed nervously, and they raced away. That evening, Thomas and Percy were puffing happily back to the sheds. They couldn't wait to rest their wheels and talk to their friends about the day's events. But as they puffed home, they were very surprised. They could see the bridge wasn't repainted, and the airport was only half finished. And when they arrived at Tidmouth Sheds, they discovered that they had been knocked down. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "What's happened to our sheds?" "Building the new ones was our important job," explained Diesel. "But we were delayed, so we couldn't finish it. And fruits and vegetables are no good for building sheds," Sir Topham Hatt added. The steam engines were cross. They didn't know about any of this, let alone that the diesels were helping. Now they didn't have a home. But Thomas was very sad. He knew it was his fault. That night, the engines each had to sleep somewhere else. James and Edward had to sleep at the quarry. "I'll never stay shiny in here," moaned James. Edward took no notice. Percy and Henry had to sleep at the smelter's yard. "Be careful not to break down, steamers," taunted Ari and Bird. "We might just scrap you by mistake." And poor Gordon had to sleep under a tent. "The indignity," he grumbled. Only Toby was safe and warm in his cozy shed. He would have gladly shared his home with the other engines, but it was much too small. Thomas felt bad. There were lots of jobs that hadn't been finished, and it was all his fault. Now he had to stay at Knapford Sheds with Emily and Murdoch. "I only wanted to teach those diesels to behave," Thomas sighed. "Be quiet and go to sleep," huffed Murdoch. He didn't like sharing a shed. He preferred peace and quiet. Emily, meanwhile, was much more polite. "Don't worry," she told Thomas. We can fix everything. I'm sure you'll be back in Titmus Sheds in no time. I hope so, puffed Thomas. But that night, a fierce storm swept through the island. It was the strongest wind the engines had ever known. It blustered and blew. The wind howled down the tracks and tore down the trees. It ripped off roofs and flattened fences. It even blew Gordon's tent away. Bother, he huffed. The other engines were glad to be tucked in for the night, but they were worried. I hope we're safe here, Percy shivered. The wind blew all night long. The Sodor suspension bridge twisted and shook in the strong winds. Then it happened. The next morning, when Thomas puffed out of the sheds, he saw that the storm had done lots of damage. Bust my buffers, he cried. Look what the wind has done. Thomas puffed across the island. He could see the storm damage all around him. The airport building site was a complete mess. The windmill was completely wrecked. But when Thomas saw that the Sodor suspension bridge had collapsed, he felt worse than ever. That morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to see the engines. He was very upset. The storm has done a great deal of damage, he said sadly. We must try to mend things, or we won't have any vacationers. Yes, sir, puffed the engines. Everyone will have to work extra hard, Sir Topham Hatt added. Otherwise, we won't be able to open the airport. Will Titmus Sheds be mended too? peeped Percy. Only after you have finished all the other jobs, Sir Topham Hatt said firmly. Later, Thomas arrived at the Sodor suspension bridge with some workmen. Diesel was already there. I'm not talking to you, oiled Diesel. You played a trick on me and gave me bananas. I'm not talking to you either, huffed Thomas. Harvey was clearing the tracks, but Ari and Bert didn't talk to him. Steam and scrap iron made us late, they grumbled. Henry brought bricks to the airport building site. And he didn't talk to Diesel either. What right do the Diesels have to rebuild our sheds? Henry pouted. It was our home, not theirs. The Diesels weren't talking to the steam engines. And the steam engines weren't talking to the Diesels. They were all cross. Later, Thomas came across Diesel 10 again. Diesel 10 was helping to clear the blocked tracks. His giant claw lifted the heavy metal into the trucks. That claw must be very strong, Thomas puffed nervously, and he puffed quickly away. He didn't want to be near Diesel 10, or his huge metal claw. That night, at Knapford Sheds, Thomas started talking again. He told Emily and Murdoch all about Diesel 10, and all about his day's work. Be quiet and go to sleep, wheezed Murdoch. Quiet yourself, Emily snapped. As long as Thomas is here, he can talk as much as he likes. But when Thomas fell asleep, he started to sleep whistle. It kept Emily and Murdoch awake. The next morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to see Thomas. "Thomas, the new section for the suspension bridge has arrived," Sir Topham Hatt said. "You must take it from Brendam Docks to the bridge." "Yes, sir," puffed Thomas. "It is very heavy, and you might need some help," Sir Topham Hatt added. "A diesel engine wouldn't need help," oiled Diesel. "Not like a steam engine." "I'm a steam engine, and I can do it by myself," Thomas huffed crossly. But when Thomas arrived at the docks, he was worried. The bridge section was very long, and it was very, very heavy. Thomas pushed and puffed, he huffed and chuffed. At last, his heavy load started to move. Thomas puffed slowly up the line. His pistons pumped and his axles ached. His load was very long and very heavy. When Thomas came to a junction, he stopped for a well-earned rest. He was very tired. Then, Harry and Bert pulled up. "Look at the little blue puffball with his heavy load," laughed Harry. "Should have gotten the diesel to help him," laughed Bert. This made Thomas cross. "No, I don't," he huffed. "I can do it all by myself." Thomas puffed slowly up to the bridge. "Well done, Thomas," the workman cried. Thomas was pleased to be there. He was looking forward to a rest, but there was another job to be done. The bridge section needed to be lifted into place. "I'll do it," Diesel oiled. "I'm much stronger than this steam engine." "No, let Thomas try," the foreman said. "He's already proven how strong he is." Thomas smiled proudly. Diesel was furious. The workmen attached strong cables to Thomas. Thomas slowly took up the strain, but the section was heavy. His wheels slipped. The workmen were worried. Thomas puffed harder and harder and held the beam steady. He edged back, slowly lifting the section. It got heavier and heavier. Thomas had to work very hard to hold the section steady, until finally it was lifted into place. The workmen cheered. "You are a very strong engine," called one of the workmen. "And very useful indeed," called another. Thomas was as tired as he had ever been, but he was so proud he felt like his boiler would burst. "Looks like steam engines are stronger than diesels," boasted Thomas. This made Diesel crosser than ever. That afternoon, Thomas had to collect some paint for the bridge. Thomas puffed into the yard and backed up to the paint trucks. But Diesel was in the yard too. "Now I'll show Thomas who's best," Diesel whispered. And he gave the trucks an extra hard shunt. Paint pots flew into the air and splattered down all over Thomas. He was covered from smoke box to cab in green, yellow, and red paint. He looked very silly indeed. "Stripy boiler," laughed Diesel, and he rolled away. I'll show those diesels, huffed Thomas. So the next time Thomas saw Airy, he gave him a biff. And when Airy saw James, he gave him a bump. Soon the diesels and the steam engines were biffing and banging and being bumped all over the island. The engines were in a terrible mess. Everyone needed repairs and a washdown, and no work had been done. That evening, Sir Topham Hatt came to see the engines. "You have all caused confusion and delay," Sir Topham Hatt said. "The bridge isn't painted, the windmill is wrecked again, and we will not be able to open the airport. No vacationers will come to Sodor this year," he added sternly. All the engines were very sad. "No vacationers?" moaned Thomas. "And no airplanes?" groaned Percy. "And now you'll never move out of my sheds," huffed Murdoch. "I wish I could," Emily puffed to herself. All of the engines were miserable. That night, they dreamed about what might happen to them if no vacationers came to Sodor. The engines were all very worried that they wouldn't be useful anymore. Thomas was dreaming too. He was wondering how he could make things better. As he wondered, Thomas puffed along a misty mountain track. And there was Lady. Lady was a very special steam engine. She worked high up in the mountains. "All I wanted was for the diesels to behave," puffed Thomas, "to stop seeing us steam engines as useless scrap iron. Now all the engines on the island are in trouble, and I don't know what we can do." Lady smiled. "We always finish our jobs when we work together," puffed Lady. Thomas knew exactly what to do. The next morning, Thomas went to the quarry to see Mavis. Mavis wasn't like some of the other diesel engines. She was feisty but kind. Thomas told her all about his plan to get the steam engines and diesel engines to work together. Mavis agreed. "It is the only way to get the airport open." "But how do we get all the engines to put aside their differences and work together?" asked Thomas. "First, we'd all need to talk to each other," said Mavis. Then Thomas had an idea. "Let's have a big meeting with all the engines here at the quarry tomorrow," he puffed. Thomas and Mavis went to see the other engines to tell them all about the meeting. Thomas told Percy, then James, then Emily. Mavis told Diesel, then Harry, then Bert. Soon all the engines on the island knew about the meeting. All the engines, except one. Thomas wanted to tell Diesel 10 about the meeting, but he was still too nervous, and he puffed quickly away. He was sure Diesel 10 would never work with steam engines anyway. Thomas had told the engines about the meeting, but it had taken a very long time. Thomas was too tired to go back to Knapford Sheds. So that night, Thomas slept outside. He pulled slowly into a siding. Thomas wanted to tell someone about what he did that day, but he only had an owl for company. Emily and Murdoch wondered where Thomas was. He must be staying with Percy, Murdoch yawned. He was just happy to have peace and quiet again. But Emily was sad. Without Thomas, it seemed a little too quiet. She missed hearing all about the day. She even missed the sound of Thomas's sleep whistle. The next morning, all of the engines went to the quarry. Steam engines and diesel engines came from all over the island. The quarry was very busy. The quarry manager was surprised. What are all these engines doing here? He wondered. So he went to telephone Sir Topham Hatt. Sir Topham Hatt was sitting down to eat his creamed bun. But then the telephone rang. The quarry manager told him all about the engines. "I'll be there at once," said Sir Topham Hatt. The engines were waiting to start the meeting, but Thomas was missing. "I'm sure he'll be here soon," said Mavis. Thomas was racing through the countryside. He puffed as fast as he could, but he had a long way to go. "Must get to the quarry, must get to the quarry," he panted. The diesel engines didn't want to wait for Thomas. "Trust the steam engine to be late," grumbled Airy. "This whole mess is the steamer's fault," grouched Bert. "No, it's not," Percy huffed crossly. "The diesel engine started it." "That's right," added Duck. "You go on and on about how river thingamy you are, yet time and again you've done nothing but make fools of yourselves, while we prove we don't need diesels to help out with the railway." This made the diesels cross. "Maybe we should teach you steam and scrap iron a lesson," said Airy. "Bring it on, you devils!" cried Douglas. Thomas finally puffed into the quarry. He blew his whistle, and all of the engines went quiet. "Steam engines and diesel engines need to work together," tooted Thomas. "Why would we want to work with steam engines?" oiled Diesel. "And why should we work with dirty diesels?" huffed James. "If the airport doesn't open, it'll be bad for all the engines," said Thomas. "Both steam engines and diesel engines need passengers and freight to be useful." All of the engines agreed. They knew that Thomas was right, and they all wanted the airport to open. Then, Harold the helicopter arrived. He had brought Sir Topham Hatt to the quarry. "Why are you all here?" Sir Topham Hatt asked. Thomas told Sir Topham Hatt all about the meeting. "We're going to work together," he said, "and get the airport open on time." Sir Topham Hatt was delighted. There were jobs for the engines all over Sodor. Percy and Mavis took paint to the Sodor suspension bridge. Toby and Daisy took workmen to the airport. Edward and Boko took building supplies. And Gordon and Bear took carpenters to Titmus Sheds. Soon the airport was finished. It had shining windows, gleaming doors, and a big tall control tower. And the runway was long and smooth. The engines were very proud and very excited. The first airplane was on its way. But there was still one more job to do. Thomas was shunting some trucks into the yard. He was taking great care, but the track was bumpy. Suddenly, they started to come off the track. Some of them headed straight for the water tower. The water tower crashed down across the runway. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the runway was cracked, and the track was blocked. The airport manager inspected the runway. "Unless it can be repaired, the airplane will have to go back," he said. "Trust the steam engine to mess things up," oiled Diesel. The Diesels were very cross. They had put up with the steam engines all day. Now Thomas had ruined everything. The steam engines were cross too. The airplane was getting closer. The workmen started to mend the runway. "We'll need George the steamroller to finish the job," the foreman said. "But I can't get past these trucks," moaned Thomas. "And George is too far away and too slow to come here by himself." The airport manager called for Harvey to clear the tracks. But Harvey was on the other side of the island. He would never make it to the airport on time. Thomas thought it was all his fault. "Now I'll never see an airplane," moaned Percy. Thomas suddenly had an idea, and he puffed quickly away. Thomas was sure that Diesel 10 could clear the track. "I hope I can get Diesel 10 to help us," puffed Thomas. Diesel 10 hated steam engines more than any diesel, but asking him to help was the only way to save the airport. Thomas needed to be very brave. "Excuse me," Thomas puffed. "What do you want, puffball?" Diesel 10 grumbled. Thomas told Diesel 10 all about the blocked track. "And why would I help a steam engine?" he growled. "Because if the airplane doesn't land, there'll be no vacationers," puffed Thomas. "Then none of the engines will be useful." "Maybe I will help," growled Diesel 10. "Later." "But we need your help now," puffed Thomas, "or all of the engines will have worked for nothing. You'll be the most useful engine of all." Diesel 10 smirked. "Useful, eh? Alright, I'll help. On one condition." "What is it?" Thomas asked nervously. "I like to be useful breaking up steam engines," snarled Diesel 10. "One day you and your little steam team won't be so useful anymore. And on that day, I'll be there to break up each and every one of them, starting with you." Thomas didn't like the sound of that, but he knew he had no other choice. "All right," he huffed. "It's a deal. But we better hurry. The airplane will be here soon." The workmen had mended the runway. "We need George the steamroller quickly," the foreman cried. "The runway is still too bumpy." Thomas and Diesel 10 were puffing as fast as they could. "Where's that sad steam and scrap iron?" grumbled Airy. "Puffed away after he messed things up," muttered Bert. But then, Thomas arrived with Diesel 10. All the engines were surprised. Ari and Bert couldn't believe what they were seeing. Before long, Diesel 10 was busy clearing wreckage into the waiting trucks. And Thomas shunted them away. "I never thought I'd see the day," said Bert. "Thomas and Diesel 10 working together. Well, grind my gears," said Ari. Diesel 10 was working very hard. "If we all help, the airplane might still be able to come," said Percy. So all of the engines joined in. They had to work quickly. The diesels forgot how old the steam engines were, and the steam engines forgot how oily the diesels were. As soon as the tracks were clear, Thomas raced off to get George the steamroller. George smoothed the runway. Suddenly, there was a familiar sound. It was Harold the helicopter, and he brought Sir Topham Hatt. "The airport looks wonderful, chaps," said Harold. "The airplane will soon be here," said Sir Topham Hatt. All the engines were very excited. "Working with diesels was fun after all," said Thomas. "And working with steam engines wasn't bad either," said Diesel. They all knew that steam engines and diesel engines had their differences, but they both liked to pull trucks and coaches, and they both loved to be really useful. The first airplane was approaching. At last, the airplane landed. All the engines agreed it was a wonderful sight. They were so happy they blew their whistles and blasted their air horns. "How did you manage to get Diesel 10 to help us?" asked Percy. Thomas smiled. "Every engine wants to be really useful," he said. "Even Diesel 10. "Oh, I'll be really useful," oiled Diesel 10. "But you won't be soon, Puffball. Right, Pinchy?" That evening, the engines went to see Sir Topham Hatt. They were surprised and delighted to find that the sheds had finally been rebuilt. "They look beautiful," puffed Henry. "Better than ever before," added Edward. "I was just starting to like my tent," huffed Gordon. "And now you can all come home," Sir Topham Hatt added. But Emily was sad. She liked sharing a shed with Thomas. She was going to miss him. Then Percy noticed something. "There's an extra space," he cried. "The old sheds only had 6. Now there's 7. "The new space is for Emily," said Sir Topham Hatt. "From now on, she will stay at Tidmouth Sheds." Emily was delighted. That night, the engines talked about steam engines, diesel engines, and airplanes. And they all agreed that Tidmouth Sheds was the best place to be.